My name's Andrew David Jackson, and I'm a teacher of Korean history and language and popular culture at Monash University. I want to talk a little bit about teaching English in Korea. It's something I did for many years. And just to give you an idea, over the years I was a teacher and a teacher trainer of English as a foreign language, EFL, in Rome in Italy, in Barcelona, at Yonsei University for about 4 years in South Korea, Ewha Women's University also for a couple of years there, and at Songshin Women's University in Seoul, also in Nagoya in Japan, the British Council, as well as in other countries around the world, in Canada and Quebec. And in 15 minutes, I'm going to explain why it's a great job to have, and it's a great thing to do. I'm also going to talk about some of the challenges of teaching teaching English in Korea. Some of the places you could work, for example, in a Hagwon or doing the EPIC program. Some of the training you can get, especially short courses. And also I'll give some tips, which I may let you follow up on at the end about finding jobs. But first, just to give you an idea of why it's a great job to have, if what I said about my experiences around the world hasn't already sort of whet your appetite, it's a great job to have because basically there are fairly low entry requirements, especially for South Korea. You basically need a university degree, a BA, BSc, any kind really, and you know, if you have a BA in education or BEd, or if you have a BA in TESOL, even better. But if you don't, that's not a problem. Just get your degree. Once you've got your degree, that means you can get a visa. So it's very important to have that degree, university degree. And then if you have a bachelor's in science subject or something else, then you can get one of these short-term sort of ESL or EFL, English as a foreign language teaching courses. That last about a month or so, and then that will sort of get you into your first job. So quite low entry requirements to get the job. It's a really engaging job. It's really interesting. It's fascinating. It'll keep you occupied. It'll keep you mentally occupied, but it won't eat up all of your time like a lot of other jobs you may go to. You won't be at it, 24/7, and you will have time off to do what you want to do. You will also get a lot of respect, especially in South Korea. They really respect sort of teachers. So, it's one of those jobs where, although you're a sort of entry-level graduate, you can go straight into a job, and generally speaking, by adults at least, or you will be sort of given a certain amount of respect as Nim, or if you get a job in a university at Kyosunim. It's fairly easy to get into as well. There are lots and lots of jobs going in South Korea. The demand for English is quite famous around the world in South Korea. So they're always on the lookout for English teachers. And what's also good is it doesn't really matter where you come from around the world, as long as you've got you are a fluent speaker of English. But also, if you're from an English-speaking country, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, UK, USA, that does tend to get you into the job. If you're from somewhere else, but you're a fluent English speaker, then you can certainly, get jobs as well. So things have changed over the past few years. It wasn't always the case, but you can certainly get jobs. You may have to work a little bit harder, but you will get them. There's a lot of flexibility, as I said before. It'll give you the time if you want to study Korean. It will give you the time if you want to do Taekwondo, for example, if you've got a hobby or a pastime. It will give you time to do other things. And it's a maneuverable job. You don't have to stay in it for years and years and years. You can do it for a year before coming back to Australia or doing another job. Lots of people I met were always saying, they were just doing English teaching temporarily. They were between jobs. They were going to do something else. They were novelists, or they were artists, or whatever, or they were studying Taekwondo or some Korean in Korea. They were just doing English on the side. Well, I was a professional English teacher and I loved it, but you'll find it is quite flexible. You can have that sort of access to it. And it's maneuverable. You can move from place to place, from country to country, as I said earlier. It's quite easy to move around the world. I went from Korea to Japan with fairly few problems. And it's very rewarding. I met some of the nicest people I ever met teaching English. I made friends with some of my students and with the other teachers. I can still keep in touch with those people. And I had some great experiences, and you can't really replace that. So it really is a great job to do. Now, there are some challenges, of course, especially in South Korea, with working in this industry. English teaching is fairly unregulated. So you will find quite a few sort of quite ruthless characters on the market. I actually worked for gangsters when I was in Italy, for example. The local gangsters, they owned the school and they paid me and all that, and I enjoyed the job, and it didn't sort of give me any trouble, but they were gangsters, and they just had they ran these schools on the side. I don't think they paid the taxes and this kind of thing, but that's just between you and me. But anyway, in South Korea, it is also a fairly unregulated industry, so you will have to be careful. But if you look at some of the slides that I put at the end of these slides, it will help you ask questions. That will help you make sure you don't get into a job where you might be taken for a ride. Now, another challenge of the job is, who you'll be teaching. I was mainly teaching adults in South Korea, and I found that very rewarding. But you may find you go to Korea and you're expected to teach children. Well, children's fine. Children, like children anywhere around the world, can be like this, as you see in this image. Sometimes it can be quite lively, a bit like this in this image. Sometimes they can be like that, as you see in this image, quite sort of difficult to handle. And sometimes they can be like that. South Korea, especially with their sort of educational regime, kids are often quite tired out from studying so hard. So some people find it quite challenging to teach kids, and don't believe the stereotypes that everyone in South Korea is really well behaved. It's just like anywhere else around the world. Go to a country and you'll find people who are very polite, and also people who are not so polite. And you also find that with kids. Kids are kids wherever you go, and they could be quite raucous and rude and unthinking, and they may play up as well. So you've got to bear that in mind. Do you want to teach kids? I found it okay, but as I say, I was mainly teaching adults. Another problem with the job is there's not really promotion as prospects, not really anywhere you can go. You don't have one of these jobs where you're working 24/7, 365 days a year, like in academia, for example, where you're at it around the clock. You're expected to do a lot of things. When you've done your lessons and you've prepared your lessons, you can have some downtime. I found that very refreshing as a job. Also, I found that maybe this is not such a problem now, but in the past it was a slight problem I found. When I went back to the UK from Korea, and I said, well, what have you been doing for the past 3 years? I said, well, I've been teaching English. They were like, oh, that's not a proper job, is it? I don't think it's like that anymore. I think people really value the experiences people have and see it as valuable as getting these foreign experiences, learning foreign languages, living in foreign cultures. It's sort of character building in some ways. So this may not be a problem nowadays, but I did find that the job had limited face validity before. Now, there are many places you can work in South Korea. Probably the most famous are Hagwon, which are kind of private English language schools, or private cram schools, I'd probably call them. And you find Hagwon, they teach all sorts of subjects, maths and sciences to get into university, but they also teach English. And you'll find these all over the place. You'll also find jobs via recruitment agencies, which can be, you've got to be sort of careful with. On the EPIC program, which is the English program in Korea, it's a government-run equivalent of the JET program in Japan, but in Korea, where they match you up with jobs in schools and middle schools and high schools. You can also get jobs at universities, where I worked as well, and also in higher repute language institutes like the British Council, International House, world sort of organizations, universities I worked at, and I really enjoyed that. And these are kind of the elite jobs you can get, or at least they were, and the ones you might be thinking about. And also privately one-to-one, but you may find that you do privates in combination with other jobs, for example, working in a Hug One. So let's deal with the most common first, and the most common jobs definitely at Hug One, which are private institutes, as I said, or cram schools. Generally speaking, you'll be teaching children during the day, and also adults in very early morning classes and later night classes before and after work. These are usually office workers, but you also have children and homemakers during the day. The peak times, the peak adult times, as I said, were early morning and evenings. And classes go from anything from 45 minutes to 2-hour classes. I even taught a 2.5-hour class, which is quite interesting, but it was very enjoyable. The good side of working for Hug One is that often Hug One will arrange visas, insurance, flights, but be careful of the package, what you're offered and what you get. Make sure you do get, insurance and visas paid for. You don't have to pay for this out of your own pocket. You may not get flights, but you may get settling in fees, and maybe even accommodation. Check up, depends on the school. There is also lots of national holidays and paid vacations. National holidays in Korea are quite plentiful. There's lots of days off where you can have fun and go around and travel and all the rest of it. And also you may get paid vacations, but check. Now, attached with these Hug Ones are these kind of, what do they call them? Like sites which kind of advertise for teachers in Korea. Be careful with these, because sometimes they're full of really great information, but they also promise you like a training course if you pay for like however much. And at the end of it, they also say you can get a job. Well, be careful with these sites, because they may just sell you a training package which might not be of much value, and you don't get a job at the end of it. So this is something you've got to be careful of with these sites, but also with Hug Ones. There are scammers around, people take you for a ride. But there are lots of people who are very bona fide and will employ you well, and you'll have a great time. So there are different experiences out there, but check my questions in the PPT accompanying this slides, this video. And these are questions to ask about these websites, but also about these Hug Ones. Epic program is also another thing you can do. Now, to apply for this, I've never done it, but I've only heard about this. I've worked at Hug One before, but to apply, you usually need 2 recommendation letters and an interview. You'll need a certain nationality from an English-speaking country, for example, the UK or Australia, New Zealand. And you'll need a bachelor's degree. Now, these things, the Australian nationality might be sort of negotiable. You may, if you come from another country but you're a fluent English speaker, then you may be accepted. So just apply, find out from them directly. You'll be assigned to high or middle schools somewhere in Korea, and generally speaking, because it's a government-run agency and government-run job, the conditions will be fairly good. I mean, they do vary from place to place. In some places you'll get accommodation and you'll be treated like a lord, but in other places you may get sort of left on to your own devices. It depends. You'll get a fairly decent regular wage, and you'll get settling in expenses and health insurance. So this is all good. You'll be looked after in that way. But the bad thing is you may not, if your dream job is a job in Seoul, you may not get it. So remember that. And getting jobs in sort of center of Seoul or Busan will be very challenging. You may find yourself out in the boondocks, out in the sticks a little bit. Maybe even in provincial rural areas. But when you say provincial rural area in South Korea, generally speaking, it's quite built up, and it'll still be a lively place. Plenty of places to go out if you're into going out, and quite a lot of things to do. And also, just jump on a bus a coach or on a train, and you'll be in Seoul fairly quickly anyway. It's not a massive country. And I find some of my experiences in rural areas were better than in the city. You know, people were generally more curious about you and they wanted to know more. And I had some deeper friendships there. Now, there are a lot of training courses to go make. And if you got a BA in science subject or something like that, you may be required to get on the EPIC program, for example, to do a short-term course. Now, there are a lot of courses on the market. I won't beat around the bush. I'll just tell you which one I think is the best, and that is the CELTA. It's run by the University of Cambridge. It's the Certificate of Teaching English as a Foreign Language to Adults. It's not cheap. It costs about $3,000, possibly more than that, $3,500. So it's a huge investment. And you may find, oh, there are 1 month courses that only cost $1,000, but it may be a false economy in the sense that the job isn't, the qualification isn't really worth much. Now, my belief is any experience is better than no experience, any training is better than no training. So, but the difference is between the CELTA and other courses is you get 6 hours of observed teaching practice. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in a month. That will be teaching practice evaluation and teaching practice feedback based on from an experienced practitioner and teacher trainer who's had many years of experience, probably in several countries around the world, and it will be worth its weight in gold. It will really give you the confidence to go into a classroom and teach English, even though it's a month-long course. It's quite stressful. It's quite a full-on course, but it is worth it. And I worked as a teacher trainer on these courses, and I know what it's like, and I really do recommend them. And it will provide you, it's reflective, it's rewarding, and it will provide you with a toolkit to survive in most situations. So just to finish off, my recommendation is that you take some kind of CELTA course wherever you are. If you're in Melbourne, and then you apply for something like the EPIC with your BA degree, or to a reputable Hagwon. And you can find these Hagwon job postings on the KOTISOL, the Korean teachers of English as a second language website, or on if you discuss with your CELTA school or through contacts, you can find several sites which advertise these jobs. And I think this will get you into Korea and get you a job there that you can start and you can really enjoy. And then the rest of the slides I've sort of please download them, and these will give you questions to ask and to check out. But these are my recommendations, and please get in contact if you have any questions. And I hope if you do decide to go to South Korea, you really enjoy it, because I absolutely loved it.